Okay, so this video is going to be a review of these Raleno lights, which I have absolutely fallen in love with, but this is going to be a bit of an unconventional review as well. I'm going to really go off the rails here and talk about why I love these lights so much and some of the challenges that I've faced as a small creator in a very small filming space and why I've fallen in love with these lights so much. So this is not going to be a conventional review. Consider this more of a vlog slash review, and I'm going to be putting timestamps in this video so that you can jump around and get the pieces that are most important to you. But if you're a new YouTuber, somebody who is thinking about getting into YouTube and you don't really know what to get yet, I think this is a very important video for you to watch, because I'm going to share with you some mistakes that I've made along the way and some things that you can avoid that basically will save you a lot of headache down the road if you're looking to start your career as an amateur videographer, filmmaker, that kind of thing. So overall, this is a review of the Raleno lights, but I'm going to be talking about amateur videography lighting in general. So I think a lot of people, when they first get started and fall down that rabbit hole and start kicking the idea around of making videos, they will instantly go to Google, they'll go to YouTube, and they'll say, what is the best camera I can get for starting out a YouTube career or something of that nature. And I'm going to tell you right now, from my experience, the camera isn't quite so important as the lighting is. A lot of people will tell you that, you know, the number one most important thing of making videos is the audio, and that's absolutely correct. And that's another video for another day. But I would say the second most important thing, even ahead of the camera, is your lighting. And I think a lot of people really put that emphasis on the camera, and myself included, in the beginning, didn't really understand lighting and didn't understand how much lighting really matters in your video. And it's, like I said, I think it's the second most important thing in the video making process, even more important than I would say than the camera. Now, I would say that good lighting with a bad camera is going to look better than a good camera with bad lighting. And I mean, you know, that's within reason. When you get so bad with your camera, of course there's not much that can be done, but I think if you have a really good camera and bad lighting, it's not going to make as much difference as if you have a mediocre camera and good lighting, if that makes any sense. So getting into these lights right here, these Raleno lights, I've got two of them. I've got this smaller one here, and I've got this bigger one over here. So the reason that I've taken to liking these lights so much is because I, as an amateur video producer, I am filming in a very small room, like I think a lot of amateur video producers will be doing in their careers. I have 3 shots set up in this very maybe 20 by 12 foot room, and I've got my shelving and dressers and desk and bed all in this room, in addition to making the space work for me. So one of the things that I really love about these lights is that they are small and they don't take up a lot of room. It's a very small footprint that they take up. Something like studio lighting with with the big umbrellas, and that's just not in the cards for me, as I think a lot of people would run into that limitation as well. So these things, you put them on a mini tripod and you turn them off and on. That's your setup time. And which leads me to another thing. If you are if you're doing this kind of thing as a hobby, you know, you've got your full-time job that you do, you've got your family, you've got your personal life, everything. Time is of the essence. You really don't have a lot of time to spare, and when it comes to setting up and tearing down equipment, it's nice to be able to just set something up, turn it on, and be ready to go, and not have to go through a lengthy process of tearing things down. And the other big important factor that I find with these things is the expense involved. And I'm going to get into a cost breakdown later, but really, bang for the buck, these are the best lights that I have found. These are what I would consider the poor man's version of the Elgato key light. But I didn't want to spend $200 on a single light, so these are the lights that I settled on, and I'm really glad that I did, because these things are quite awesome. And I started out with some other lights to begin with, and I did the trip to the dollar store and grabbed a couple of lamps, and I ended up buying some of these newer CN160s, and they're just not very good. These Raleno lights, though, I have ended up being just overwhelmingly pleased with them. I bought this one first and really liked the light that it gave off, and ended up going and getting a second one here as my lighting setup, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty much done. I may end up getting something else in the future to kind of accent this, but I like the small and portability use of these lights. And I mean, for my backlighting back here, I'm just keeping it really simple. It's just a simple lamp back here, just kind of shining on the wall. But yeah, as far as it goes, space, time, expense, these things are amazing, and I can't recommend them enough for somebody who is in a similar type situation that I am, making amateur content for YouTube. These lights are absolutely amazing. With all of that being said, now I'm going to get into the review portion of the video. So before we get started, I want to point out that I am just an amateur videographer. My background lies in editing, mostly in After Effects. With that being said, everything that I've learned about lighting, I've learned from watching YouTube tutorials. For the most part, I think most of the major lighting points will be covered in a video by Nigel Barros titled How to Make a $300 Camera Look Pro. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. I also recommend his other video about making smartphone video look pro as well. So here's the smaller light that I just got. Raleno lights come in very basic, no frills packaging, but don't let that fool you. The product inside is awesome. So in this box, we get a micro USB charging cable. It should be noted that this smaller unit does not include a power brick, but it just uses a standard USB phone plug, and I think most of us have a ton of those lying around. I do want to point out that the larger unit requires a more beefy power supply, which is indeed included with the unit. Both light kits also include a 1/4-20 threaded mount with a shoe that can be mounted on top of the camera or threaded onto a tripod. We get printed instructions and the light itself. It's lightweight but solidly built. There's an LED indicator on the back of both units showing the battery status, brightness percentage, and color temperature settings. There's a power switch and 2 dials. One controls the brightness range and the other controls the color temperature range. For comparison, here's a side-by-side of the two lights. And for further comparison, here's a newer CN160. The CN160 uses a removable battery that must be removed to be charged. These batteries must also be purchased separately. Using the CN160 off of AC power requires an AC adapter, which must also be purchased separately. Each CN160 comes with a white and orange plastic diffuser, so your color range is very limited. Before I proceed with the demonstration of the lights in action, I would like to point out that I watched a lot of gimmicky YouTube videos suggesting that you can just go to the hardware store and pick up some lights and finagle together. I tried this. I hit up Ollie's and bought a couple of these work lights, and these super bright desk lamps. I still use the desk lamp as a backlight sometimes, and now I use the work light in my shed, fulfilling their intended use, as work lights. But as studio lighting goes, they were just mostly a waste of money. So as you can see right now, I have one really crappy light on right now. It's one of those newer CN160s, and this thing casts a lot of harsh light. If you look at my hand here as I'm putting it against the light, and you look at the shadow of my hand right here, it's a very black, thick, heavy shadow, and that's not what we want. So now I can put a plastic diffuser in here, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. Now that's the white one, and I can turn the brightness up and down. If I turn the brightness up higher, it gets even worse. So what we actually want to do to help kind of take some of the shadow off is I've got another one over here, and I'm going to turn this one on. And okay, so now basically I've got double the brightness, but the harshness of the shadows is still there, and this is a very unflattering light. And we can mess around with the brightness here, taking it up and down, and definitely get in a better spot. But for the most part, these are not very good lights. I'm going to slide in the orange colored plastic piece there to diffuse that light, and it's not the best, most optimal setting here. So what I'm actually going to do now is turn these off. And I guess if you're going for like an edgelord, 90s grunge video, this is a pretty good look, but for the most part, I don't think most people want this. I won't be held responsible. So what I've done now is I've switched over to the Raleno lights, and I've got the big one over here, and I've got the small one over here. The small one's a little bit higher, and what I would normally do is put the big one higher, but I want control within reach of the big one here to show you the difference. And if I crank this all the way up, okay, I'm hitting the wrong knob now and changing the color range, but again, that's something that you've got full range of your colors. You've got from 5600 to 3200 kelvins, and you can really dial in what you want your shot to look like here. And I'm looking down because I'm looking at my monitor output on my iPad here, is why this is kind of a weird shot for me right now. But what you can do is, yeah, you've got a full range of control there. You can go from a really warm light to a very blue light, and we can crank this all the way up, which even here, if you look at this, as far as the harshness of the shadow coming off of my hand, it is nowhere near as bad as when I was using the newer CN160s. And I can look directly at this light and it's not going to blind me either, so even on full blast. So you may think that, okay, buying these newer CN160s is a lot cheaper than buying these Ralenos, so the savings would justify buying one of these things. But what you got to keep in mind is, when you see this kit, or at least when I bought this kit, it wasn't a complete kit. It came with a mini tripod, which was nice, but battery not included, AC adapter not included, charging pack for the batteries also not included. So I had to buy the charging pack for the batteries themselves, which I bought 4 for the 4 of these that I bought. By the time I was all said and done, I was in the $150 to $200 price range, because I had bought these lights, I bought these batteries, I bought the charging pack for the battery, and I bought the AC adapters for 2 of these. And it got into a serious chunk of change just to get some really crappy, cheap lights up for my studio, and I recommend that nobody does this. Now, I can still use these lights, because what I can do is just kind of turn them on and toss them back behind me for backlighting, things like that. So they're things that I'm still going to use. But when you look at the cost of this big Raleno light over here, for example, cost me about $60, but it has the battery built in, it comes with the charging cable, it's got a full range of color, and it's just a much better looking light at the end of the day. The smaller one, I'm not sure the price of that. I'm going to have to look that up. I'll throw it up on the screen, but I think it's around 30 or 40. But again, you're still ahead to buy either one of these lights than you would to buy any of the C160s. To wrap things up, I can't stress enough how much I love these Raleno lights. I think that for the money, setup time, and space efficiency, you're just not going to find a better lighting arrangement. For the size and cost, they offer very flattering, well-diffused, soft light with a broad temperature lighting range, and include pretty much everything right out of the box that you would need to get started. I also forgot to mention in this review that both of the Raleno lights have a fantastic battery life. If you want to buy them for yourself, there will be a link in the description below, and buying through that link does help this channel. So that's my opinion on it. I think they're a lot better looking lights, and I think it's a lot better value for your money. So at this time, I want to take a minute to give a shout out to my patrons. If you want to give me a hand on Patreon, there's going to be a link in the description below. Donations are appreciated, but never expected. If you'd like to help my channel grow, do all of the YouTube stuff down below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. That's it for now, and I'll see you next time.